Welcome into Sports Memos Betting Podcast, NFL Every Game on the Board with Robbie Veno. Rob, welcome into the pod. How are you?
I am good tonight, Drew. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, Robbie. We got a full slate of NFL here, and we're going to be breaking them down from top to bottom of the card. Starting off at the top of the card, we got 251, 252 here, Robbie. New York Giants at the Detroit Lions. Looks like the Lions laying 6 in the hook at home, 49.5 the total, Robbie.
Yeah, probably difficult for me, Drew, to lay the points with Detroit, even though they're likely to be the better team. But there's some problems with the Lions, just like there are with the Giants. First off, I think more than anything, this game sets up wonderful for both of these offenses. I mean, each defense ranks in the bottom 7 versus the run. The Lions are 28, the Giants are 26. And they both rank in the bottom 10 versus the pass. Lions 30, Giants 23. So two bad defenses, two pretty good offenses. I think that now that Saquon Barkley's back for his second week, the Giants offense will pick up. Last week's game against the Arizona Cardinals, they actually missed the chip shot field goal in the fourth quarter as they attempted to come back. There was a little rain that bothered Daniel Jones, the quarterback, in that one. And the offensive line did not protect whatsoever. I think the good news for the Giants this week is that, and not to say that Arizona is some prolific pass rush team, but the Lions really don't rush the passer all that well. So I think Daniel Jones, with Barkley running the football, probably has more time to throw here. The Lions, though, Drew, newfound offensive philosophy here where they push the ball down the field. The Lions actually rank number 2 in the NFL in one of these sabermetric stats called explosive passing plays. Passing plays of 20 yards or better downfield per pass attempt. And the Lions rank second in the NFL in that particular statistic. Matthew Stafford has the tools to do it. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. We saw Marvin Jones catch 4 touchdowns last week. Giants pass defense, as I just mentioned, pathetic. So you just start putting all these pieces together and you build like an offensive scoring puzzle in this one. This total is 49.5. And I think that anybody who wants to play it over should probably play it now. If you add to the mix that on the Detroit side, Darius Slay, their top corner, is now out of the game. That was released today. Darius Slay won't play. And Quandre Diggs, their top safety and maybe their top defensive back overall, was traded in the middle of the week to Seattle. Leaves gaping holes in that secondary for the Giants to do some damage. So, I'd probably lean towards New York plus the 6.5. I think this could be a 3-4 point game either way. But I do think 49.5 is too low of a number for the total.
Good stuff. Good stuff, Robbie. Starting it off there. We got 253, 254 up next. Tampa Bay at Tennessee. Titans laying 2.5 at home, 45.5 the total here, Robbie.
Yeah, you and I actually got to talk about this one a little bit earlier in the week, Drew, on a show with Prez. Tampa Bay's off a bye week, which likely helps. I think the biggest key for me in this game is the Tennessee Titans are so dependent on being able to run the football with Derrick Henry. And Tampa Bay's the number 1 rush defense in all of football right now, only allows 68 yards per game. If in fact Tennessee can't get it going on the ground, which, let's face it, Carolina with Christian McCaffrey was unable to get it going on the ground twice versus Tampa Bay. They stuffed him to less than 55 yards rushing in both their outings against one another. So I don't know that Derrick Henry's going to run for much here, which puts the burden of offense on the shoulder of Ryan Tannehill, and a passing game, which is generally ineffective, average at best on good days. So Tampa Bay could have an advantage there, Drew. They rushed the quarterback pretty well. Tennessee, sometimes when we look at these stats, overall stats, they are really misleading and very skewed. Just want to point this out that Tennessee's pass defense ranks 11th right now in the NFL pass yardage per game wise. However, they faced a lot of lousy throwing teams and a couple of good ones inside the top 5 that they have faced. The number 2 passing team in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons, threw for 364 against Tennessee. The Chargers ranked number 3. They threw for 326. That's 2 teams inside the top 5 that threw for 325 or better. And now you have Jameis Winston with the 9th-ranked passing offense coming in. So I see a lot of things adding up here that would point to Tampa. Of course, the major drawback right off the top is the fact that Winston is so turnover prone. You hope that he doesn't make the mistakes he made in London. I'm going to bank on the fact that he doesn't in this game. And I think Tampa Bay plus, even though it's less than a field goal, I think Tampa Bay plus the points, probably a pretty good way to go. The LA Chargers, as banged up as they were, probably should have won the game in Tennessee last week. 3 touchdowns overturned at the end of the game, and they wind up losing 23-20. So I might look Tampa Bay plus the points there.
I think you're on the right side, Robbie. I like Tampa Bay here, too. One question for you with Tannehill taking snaps for Tennessee. How do you rate Tannehill?
I don't know that there's a difference between him and Mariota. I know that the general talking point is that Ryan Tannehill's less afraid to push the ball downfield, and maybe that's true. But I don't know that he's any more accurate than Marcus Mariota is. I don't know that he runs the ball any better than Mariota. I don't know that he makes plays out of broken plays any better than Mariota. So to me, it's the same deal. Whichever quarterback you have there at Tennessee is going to produce the same results, at least in my mind.
Robbie, next game up, we got 255-256 here. LA Chargers at the Chicago Bears. Bears laying 4 in Soldier Field, 41 being the total.
So you got the Bears. They're looking to avoid back-to-back home losses, which, generally speaking, when it's a good team, I do not like to bet against those types of teams. So for me, feeling that the Bears are a above 500 team, I wouldn't look to bet against them in the second home game off of a home loss. Just a philosophy that I have. However, on the other side, the Chargers come off that devastating loss on the road last week in Tennessee. We just talked about it. They're going to be on the road again. The importance that this game carries for both of these teams is huge. The LA Chargers are 2-5 right now, and a loss here, they go to 2-6, and they might have to kiss the playoffs goodbye halfway through the NFL season. And of course, for the Bears at 3-3, staring at Green Bay and Minnesota in their own division, it's really a must-win for them too. So I think you're going to get a huge effort out of both of these teams. Chargers are banged up on the defensive side. But they may get Melvin Ingram back here, Drew, which could be a big plus for them as far as pass rush is concerned. We know Mitchell Trubisky is a little bit indecisive with the ball, although the Bears have protected him really well. Doesn't get hit a lot, doesn't get sacked a lot, but just a little indecisive. So pressure from the Chargers would help here. Last week, the Bears throw 54 passes out of 61 plays. How crazy is that? 7 rushing plays out of the Bears. They're going to have to run it a little more here against the Chargers, who really don't do anything well defensively, mostly because of injuries. They don't rush the passer well. They don't defend the pass well. But they have Phillip Rivers, and the Bears don't. And if you want to simplify the game, which some people will, that would be their final point, and you go bet the Chargers. I would take the Bears, but I don't trust them to win by more than 4 points. I think this is a really tight battle either way. Probably lands on 4. To me, something 21-17, 20-16 would not be a surprise at all. I think that the Bears defense can probably choke off the San Diego running game, and then we'll have to see if Phillip Rivers can throw against these guys. But for me, it's probably a no play, Drew. I think the total's in a good place. I think the line is in a good place. Like I say, I think the Bears will win the game, but I'm not laying 4.5 with them.
Robbie, next game up, we got 257-258 here. Seattle making the almost cross-country trip to Atlanta, laying a touchdown on the road, 53 the total in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Probably difficult to play it until you really know if Matt Ryan is going to play or not. He's supposed to be reevaluated tomorrow. However, the number's taken off, right? I think I saw that thing jump to maybe 6 or something earlier this afternoon, as if people already know that Matt Ryan's not going to play. But I think the reevaluation process does take place tomorrow. We'll see. If not, it's Matt Schaub. And I certainly don't want Matt Schaub with Atlanta. Atlanta, to some extent, Drew, almost seems to be waving a bit of a white flag with the trade of Mohamed Sanu to the New England Patriots. The one thing that they do well is throw the football with that trio of wide receivers, now down to 2, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. So, you're starting to take pieces of what they do best away from them. The offensive line has been a mess. Whole article I read today on how bad the offensive line has played, aside from center Alex Mack. it's not a particularly good sign against the Seahawks because they're a physical team by nature. And Atlanta, as we see on both sides of the line this year, has been pretty soft again. Don't tackle well. Don't protect the quarterback well. Don't open up holes for the running game. We haven't heard Devontae Freeman's name much at all this year. So that part of this matchup really favors the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle has some big-time offensive line issues that this is almost getting to be like the NBA. You know how in the NBA you try and bet a play in the morning, but you really don't know who's playing until 15 minutes before the ball goes up. And in this particular game, we have the same thing with the Seattle offensive line. Three guys might lose 3/5 of their offensive line in this game, but they might not. Guys might play banged up. I think if you get any portion of that inside the Seattle offensive line, Russell Wilson, a good play here. That total to me, though, looks way too high. I know Atlanta's been playing high-scoring games, but if Matt Schaub is your quarterback here, I could see this game really being under 53 points. That's a high number to get to. And it's interesting that the Seahawks are the team that's coming into play. Atlanta head coach Dan Quinn, who, despite what the players say, don't blame it on the coach, blame it on us. It seems to me Dan Quinn is on real thin ice, and a convincing victory by the Seahawks here could be the final nail for him for sure.
Robbie, next game up, we got the New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags laying 6 at home, 40.5 the total.
Well, the talk all week is about Sam Darnold. Monday, he's, regressing. He's not a good quarterback. All the critics come out of the woodwork. 7 days before that, he was the greatest thing since sliced bread when he beat Dallas. So that's how quickly your fortunes can change in the NFL. Darnold had a toe problem this week. It seems to be good to go. So we're going to take that at a face value and assume that he's good to go. Here's one situational angle to this game, Drew. Let's forget about the players on the field for a minute because I tend to discuss fundamentals all show long. But let's take a look at the fact that the Jets have been very vocal about how angry they are and anticipating this game in particular, motivated because they feel like Jacksonville ran up the score against them last year, down 24-12, less than 2 minutes left to play. Jacksonville has the ball with a 12-point lead on the Jet 9-yard line with an opportunity to kneel down 3 times and end the game. Instead, they choose to run 3 plays, not only just run 3 plays, but in the middle of that, they call timeout to set up another play, and they push a touchdown in and go up 31-12. The Jet locker room hasn't forgotten that, and they're very, very motivated to go down here and take some shots at Jacksonville here. So I think that motivational factor could be big in this game. Jacksonville's not that good yet to where they can, overwhelm teams with motivational factors against them. Now, if I go back to Monday night, there were plenty of people willing to take 10 points, 9.5 points with New York off of seeing Sam Darnold against Dallas, and New England blows them out. And now those people that wanted the Jets have all run as far away from the Jets as you can get. And Jacksonville's a 6.5 point favorite, maybe 7 in a couple locations, which to me, if New England's 10 and Jacksonville's 7, it's really not the same thing. I know the venues are different. Jets were home getting 10. Now they're on the road getting 7. I don't know that the difference in talent here is that great at this point in time. I love what Minshew's doing. I've said it before on the show. I think he brings a passing attack to life that was stagnant for a long time here in Jacksonville. Leonard Fournette might have a difficult time with this team. The Jets, surprisingly, are the better defensive team than Jacksonville. If I just asked 100 people that follow or that bet NFL football, hey, who's the better defensive team, Jets or Jacksonville? 9 out of 10 are going to tell me Jacksonville. However, Jacksonville giving up 361 yards a game. The Jets only 352. So the perception might be a little off here, Drew. It's a good rush defense, only allowing 90-plus yards per game. If Fournette can't get going, can Minshew do it all by himself? And does Darnold play as poorly as he played against New England? Hey, listen, the coaching staff down here isn't Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick makes a lot of quarterbacks look silly. We'll see if it happens here, but I think the Jets plus points are really worth a good look in this game.
Robbie, next game up, we got Philadelphia at Buffalo. The Bills laying 2 at home, 42 the total.
Well, let's get involved in more locker room stuff here, Drew, because the Eagles really have a mess on their hands. They let go of Orlando Scandrick this week. He's popped off. Malcolm Jenkins was the target of his words. Malcolm Jenkins has retaliated. The Eagles held their first players-only meeting in 6 years this week. They're at the end of their rope here. It's a desperate situation for them. They've been absolutely drilled in back-to-back road games by Minnesota and Dallas. They lose those two games 75-30 combined. And it's either going to be a bounce back or this team's going to fall apart. And it's really your best guess, Drew, which it's going to be with them. I would tend to think that they're talented enough to, rally together, so to speak, and fight it off. But this is no ordinary team they're playing in Buffalo. Buffalo defensively has a lot of things that they can do to attack Eagle weaknesses, and especially the fact that Deshaun Jackson still is unable to go for the Eagles. I mean, for the last 3 weeks, we've heard the Eagles have no vertical threat. Nobody's afraid of them downfield. Nobody to take the top off of defense. And defenses have crept up against the Eagles and made life tough for the receivers. Jeffrey and the couple of tight ends there that are really good. But when everybody's crowding the line of scrimmage, things become tougher. So for the Eagles, the fundamentals don't work offensively. Defensively, they're still banged up in the secondary. I just don't know if Buffalo is good enough on offense to take advantage of what Philadelphia presents to them. If they are on Sunday, they're going to win this game big. And I think there's a lot of people, Drew, that feel like maybe the Bills, aren't as good as they were before they went to Miami, just based off of the Miami result. But Miami's played better as of late, as have the Redskins. So it was a divisional game. I'm going to give the Bills a pass on that non-cover. I don't know which way to go with this, honestly, because I don't know which way the Eagles are going to go. There's a lot going on there, a lot of dysfunction, and I'll have to see. Carson Wentz hasn't played very well, and the whole thing's kind of a mess at this point in time. Doug Peterson guaranteeing victories that he has to walk back and then swallow. And I guess if I had to play, I'd be on Buffalo. That's pretty much the summary there.
Robbie, next game up, I believe we head to the other side of the pond, right?
What do we have? The Rams and the Bengals?
Yes, Cincinnati at the LA Rams, 11.5. That's what the Rams are laying right now. 11.5 to 12.5. There's a little opinion here. 47.5 the total, Robbie.
And the defense has caught a break for the Rams because the defense really wasn't playing that well, Drew. But last week they get the Atlanta Falcons offensive line, and finally Aaron Donald and company can do some damage. They get 5 sacks. They get 9 quarterback hits. Really made life tough for the Falcons, 37-10 cruise victory. Cincinnati presents the same thing. It's an offensive line that is absolutely decimated, can't protect Andy Dalton. We've seen it week after week going way back to the Pittsburgh Monday night game. So I think L.A., from a defensive standpoint, as long as they can handle the other team's offense, they're always going to be in pretty good shape. The offense really hasn't left them. Scored big last week. Jared Goff still didn't have a good game, but they did win rather easily. Cincinnati's only scored 17 points or above 17 points twice all season long, so they really don't have to worry about if they get out on top, if Cincinnati's going to come from behind to get them. It's that time of season, Drew, and I know it's not really sound the alarm team for everybody, but in the Rams' case, when you just look at a playoff picture, there's 4 division winners, and then there's 3 more teams that right now have a better record than the LA Rams do. They're staring up at 2 teams in their own division, Seattle and San Francisco. So when you have a game like this, non-conference, I know they're the 3rd most important of all, but for the Rams this week, it probably is of the utmost importance to come out, get off to a quick start. They've been complaining about slow starts all season long. Last week, it worked out a little bit better. This week, it should work out really, really good for them. I think that they can impose their will on Cincinnati. I understand the line move in this game. And for me, although NFL double-digit favorites are living pretty dangerous when you back those and bet those kind of games, but I think that the Rams are probably a good side here. I just don't see enough life out of Cincinnati. That being said, Cincy has a double-digit dog, I think went to Buffalo, was it, and played them. They played Buffalo really tough, but they were a double-digit dog somewhere else and only lost 23-17. So they
At
have
Baltimore.
at Baltimore, as a double-digit dog. So they performed in this role. I just don't think situationally this one fits them. I think the Rams have all the matchups in their favor.
Robbie, next game up, we got Arizona at New Orleans. Looks like the Saints laying 10 in the hook, 48 the total in the Big Easy.
I, in my mind, Drew, keep thinking, because I've seen them against Dallas and against Chicago now, play very, very good defense. And in my mind, I have this kind of mindset that New Orleans is an elite defensive team. But when you break down their schedule, you find out that they've allowed 24 points or more in 5 of their 7 games. The only 2 times they didn't allow 24 are the 2 I just talked about, Dallas and last week, I'm forgetting the other one, but only twice all season long. Okay. So with that being said, 5 games of over 24 or more, Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals are probably in play here. Their offense, you watched them last week, and the running plays that they run under Cliff Kingsbury look like watching Big 12 football on a Saturday with all these jet sweeps and fake jet sweeps and runs the other way and all the misdirection. And it caught the Giants off guard. Chase Edmonds had a huge day last week for the Arizona Cardinals, even in the absence of David Johnson, who got hurt, I think, on the first play of the game. So for me, Arizona, if they can get to 23 points, which at the pace they play, I think is really possible, plus points here, I think are worth taking. New Orleans has not been that tremendous on offense. The problem with betting it is that you don't know if Drew Brees right now is going to play or not. If Drew Brees plays, if Alvin Kamara gets back, which is also a possibility, then you have a whole different ballgame. You can't handicap it the way I'm handicapping it right now, thinking that neither will play. Again, like I was saying earlier about, NBA 15 minutes before tip time, you kind of have to go through and see how these injuries unfold, see what Sean Payton has to say. If you find out on Saturday night that, hey, Drew Brees is going to play and Alvin Kamara is in, then you might have to lay off here. But if that's not the case, I think Arizona plus points are worth a shot in this one. And if that total does not move, Drew, another option here, if the total sits at 47.5 and Brees and Kamara play, then you have to play over the total here because this game will get over that number of 47.5. You could be proactive and take your best guess right now and play it before it goes up. But again, you really don't know which way the head coach is going with these injuries.
And Robbie, you're not worried about Arizona moving the ball against that New Orleans defense?
Well, not for an entire game, because Arizona gets so many extra series in a game because of the pace that they play at, that, if they're unsuccessful, let's say 9 times, but they get the ball 14, those other 5 times, if they become field goals or touchdowns or somehow add up to 23 points, they can get there. They've proven that they can get there just based on the amount that they have the ball. And I think that's what comes into play here, added in with the fact that, like I said earlier, New Orleans has found a way to give up 24 or more in 5 out of 7 games. So where my mind was telling me New Orleans is an elite defense, looking at the numbers tells me something different. And Arizona should be able to get themselves to, I would say 23 is a good spot for Arizona.
Robbie, next game up, we got Oakland at Houston. Looks like the Texans laying 6.5 or 7 at home. An important one to shop around. 51.5 the total, Robbie.
Yeah, these Raider totals get bet, Drew. I mean, they get bet upward every single week. And you know what? The money hasn't been wrong. When the Raiders get bet over the total, the games go over the total. Last week against Green Bay, with Green Bay having a really banged up wide receiving core, the total still got bet up. Now, Green Bay wound up playing Valdez-Scantling and Geronimo Allison, even though Geronimo Allison wasn't really healthy. And that game easily went over. We saw the final score. So I'm not going to play it under. Certainly the Raiders, even though John Gruden has said time after time that he wants to be a predominant power running team, it hasn't really worked out that way. But they've been an effective offense. And certainly the Houston Texans are an effective offense when they don't get pressure on Deshaun Watson. He's fantastic. He'll lose a key member here. Will Fuller won't play in this game, so that takes a deep threat away from them. But still, there's probably enough weapons for Houston to attack Oakland. Oakland's been a bad defense. For me, 51.5 is probably a little bit too high now. 51 is a very key number in NFL contests, 31-20, and you don't cash a ticket anymore. So I'll probably lay off of this one, Drew. But again, when the money's come in on Oakland totals up and over, it's been right the times that it's happened. I think it happened against Baltimore. There was a big move to the over. Last week against Green Bay, big move to the over. Here we see a big move to the over. I'm not going to play it, but I'd be weary of it.
Robbie, next game, we got Carolina at San Francisco. Looks like the 49ers laying 5.5 in Levi's Stadium. 42 the total here, Rob.
Yeah, this one has got a really nice combination of back and forth with people that I've talked to all week long, Drew, doing shows. There's some real staunch Carolina backers here, and there's some real staunch San Francisco backers on the other side. I think fundamentally, if you're going to play this game, if you look at it strictly from that angle, you probably like San Francisco, and for these reasons. Christian McCaffrey, and I believe this is a game that you and I discussed as well earlier in the week, but Christian McCaffrey certainly wears that bullseye every game now when they take the field because he is the primary weapon of Carolina. I mean, their philosophy is to get the ball in his hands 25 plus times a game somehow, some way. So you have to take him out of it. Tampa Bay was able to do it twice, and they won one of those games straight up. They lost the second one. San Francisco has the defensive capability to do it here. What they have that Tampa Bay does not is they have an insane pass rush, which Tampa doesn't, and they have guys on the back end that can cover, which Tampa doesn't. So if you stop McCaffrey and Kyle Allen needs to throw to move the football, and there's people breathing down his neck more times than not, we're going to see he's performed great up to this point. Can't take anything away from him. But I don't think he's faced the kind of pressure he may see on Sunday. So I think Carolina's offensive end might be short a little bit here point-wise. The other side of the coin is San Francisco's offense, which is based or predicated solely on power rushing. And we've seen them survive some tough injuries, Drew. They've survived injuries to both tackles, and they've survived injury to their starting fullback, who they counted on a lot to block, lead block for their running game, and they've still overcome it. Last week's 9-0 game, I think we have to throw out the window because it was played on a mud-soaked field in Washington. They still get out of there with the shutout 9-0. For me, San Francisco coming back home with the fundamental edges on their side. Carolina, pretty good run defense, and we'll see what Garoppolo can do through the air. But I just think that their defense is going to make shorter fields for their offense and be able to let San Francisco cover the 5.5. Not thrilled about it, but that's the way I'd go with it. San Francisco minus the points.
Robbie, interesting tidbit here on Indianapolis. I think the game we just talked about before was both quarterbacks, Tom Brady's backups from back in the day, and they're both off to great starts. You think there could be anything there to Tom Brady giving them little tidbits on helping them the next year when they're starters?
You know what? It's just possible the way they coach up there in New England, Drew. I mean,
yeah,
that's about, it probably Josh McDaniels, a great offensive coordinator. Not that these guys go to the same system, but I think the way that they're coached up there has a lot to do with it. They're both talented kids. Let's not forget. But certainly the New England connection might have something to do with it for sure.
Robbie, next game up, we got Cleveland at New England. Looks like the Patriots 11.5, 44 being the total.
I'd really like to be on Cleveland here, plus the points. New England short work week off the blowout. Still, the injury list for New England is extensive, Drew, and they were able to overcome that again on Monday, facing a team that really didn't present much of an offensive threat once they got behind. I mean, that game was 17-0 before you blinked, and really the Jets were in for a long night once that happened. Baker Mayfield against Bill Belichick. Again, these young quarterbacks against this head coach. I am not the first guy to say that. I won't be the last. Everybody really that follows football knows that he makes young quarterbacks look a little bit less than what they're capable of. And the defensive looks, we'll see if Baker Mayfield can handle it. But I still think, Drew, that there's going to be a week where the injury list of the New England Patriots comes back to haunt them, and they're unable to cover a football game. Now, it's happened once. They went to Buffalo as a banged-up football team, and Buffalo almost won straight up. But as a big dog, Buffalo covered that game. And I think Cleveland might be good enough to do the same. The problem right now for Cleveland is the fact that they can't stop the run and that they're real soft across that defensive line. And if we know one thing about New England, if they make up their mind that they want to run the football 30 times here, they will run it right down Cleveland's throat. It'll move the game quicker, and maybe it'll keep points down and still help Cleveland plus 11.5. At some point in time, Mayfield's got to be able to score points with his receivers, with his running game. I really think that plus 11.5 is too much here. My power ratings don't indicate it. The price is fair. Just on a situational basis, short work week, injury-laden team. New England, of course, pulls off the trade for Mohamed Sanu, which helps their wide receiving core, right? The wide receiving core had been banged up, and you throw Sanu in there. I don't care if he knows the playbook or not. They'll find a way to get him the ball and make something happen. So you always have to be afraid of that stuff. But I'm just looking at the points here, thinking that they're a little too big, that the perception of this team off of Monday night's game actually adds a couple of points to this price. So to me, I think Cleveland sneaks under the number here.
And Robbie, what was the stat? New England has won 19 straight games versus first or second year quarterbacks in the NFL. Is that the stat?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's crazy, man.
I mean, he just, they mix up those coverages and those defensive looks, and these guys can't handle it. Mayfield, hopefully in his second year, is able to make some adjustments here.
We got Green Bay at Kansas City for the Sunday nighter here. The Packers laying 4 or 4 in the hook on the road, 47.5 the total in Arrowhead. This is an interesting one, Robbie. A lot of tickets going to be written and a lot of opinion from what I've heard on different ways to bet this one. What are you thinking?
Well, I think the easiest way to bet this one is over 47.5 points. You don't see 47.5 in a Kansas City game, and right now you really shouldn't see 47.5 in a Green Bay game. And the matchups here would lead you instantly to that conclusion, unless you think, here's the only thing that could stop you from playing it, is you think that Matt Moore is such a bum that he can't get the ball once or twice to Tyreek Hill, that he can't get the ball to Travis Kelce, that he's going to be on his back, sacked all game long. I'm not of that opinion. I think if you put enough weaponry around a guy, then a guy of his age and of his stature in the NFL, certainly journeyman, but he's been in some important games in his career. Has he ever had weapons like this on an offense? I'm not so sure that he has. But in my estimation, he can lead this offense. He's not going to be Pat Mahomes. He's not going to roll out of the pocket when the play isn't there and still make something out of nothing. But he'll probably do the smart thing, throw it away and live to play another day. I don't think he's going to make stupid mistakes in this contest. They still have a really good running game. And Green Bay, to me, Drew, is more than a tad overrated defensively. I know a lot's been made of the pass rush that they acquired in the offseason, but it hasn't been consistent. And I know a lot's been made of the defensive backfield that they have in place now, but it hasn't been consistent. And this is not the type of team that you want to be inconsistent against. Now that I rambled on how I think KC can score points, the other side might be able to score even easier. It's one thing to be a bad defense. It's another thing to be missing parts from that bad defense. And KC, Chris Jones is a huge deal in the middle of that defensive line. But you take Chris Jones and then you take their top pass rusher and you start eliminating defensive linemen from that unit. And not only will the Green Bay Packers be able to run with Aaron Jones, because we saw Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago, the whole second half, once Chris Jones went out, just hand off the ball and win a game in Kansas City because they can't stop the run. Last week against Denver, Joe Flacco was getting sacked. They were applying pressure, but that's different than applying pressure to Aaron Rodgers. Teams don't want to all-out blitz Aaron Rodgers because it's costly in the end. Devontae Adams still might not play, but he threw a bunch of touchdowns last week without Devontae Adams. I just think that there's a million ways for Green Bay to score here, rushing and passing. I think there's a lot of ways for Matt Moore to put points up on the board. And I just can't remember the last time I saw 47.5 in a Kansas City game. Normally, it's automatically baseline 52, right in that vicinity. I just don't see this one getting played as an under. There's no weather. I checked for bad weather. So I think you'll probably see points here, and I think people will be a little bit, at least those who don't think Matt Moore can do the job, that think that the gap between Mahomes and Moore is so canyon-like that KC will be inept offensively. I don't think that's going to be the case.
He's Robbie Veno, and we got one game left on the podcast, and special coupon code for the pod, Veno29, gives you his 3-day all access at sportsmemo.com for less than $30, less than $10 a day, using the coupon code Veno29 at checkout for his 3-day all access pass at sportsmemo.com. We got the Monday Nighter here. We'll just hit it real quick, Robbie, because we will be breaking it down in full on the Opening Line podcast with Teddy Covers on Monday. But we got Miami, the Dolphins on the road in Pittsburgh, Steelers minus 2 touchdowns at home, 43.5 the total, Robbie.
Maybe I could just leave this one to Teddy. Make it all his.
You can do that.
The only thing I could say real quick, Drew, on that is that I do think that Pittsburgh's pass rush comes into play here. They've been very, very good. They're off a bye week, and hopefully they settle some offensive issues. It could be too big of a number for them because Miami behind Ryan Fitzpatrick seems to be a more than capable offense. They did score against Buffalo last week. I haven't fully made up my mind on this yet, and I really haven't given it a thorough look yet. I probably will over the weekend, but at this point in time, I would think that 14 points in an NFL game is a lot, no matter who you are. Maybe under could be a way that I'd look, but like I say, without going through it thoroughly, I don't want to recommend anything to listeners. I just know that I think right off the bat, Pittsburgh's pass rush will be an issue for that Miami offensive line.
Robbie, great stuff. As always, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
Hey, good luck to everybody out there this weekend. Hopefully we're putting money in your pockets. We love doing the podcast. We love the comment section, guys. Throw them at us. The YouTube videos are up the past few weeks, and we thank everybody that's watching because we're getting our share of viewers here, Drew. So hopefully people continue, and we will try to continue to bring you the best info we can.
Absolutely, Robbie. Well said. You can always listen on the website, sportsmemo.com, Apple iTunes podcast app, and on YouTube. Like Robbie said, we got it simulcast, the podcast up on YouTube. So, Robbie Veno, thanks for the time, buddy. Best of luck with your bets. Best of luck out there. Have a fun, safe weekend, and we'll talk on Monday.